I dragged out more pictures than I thought I had.
Good evening, this is Brett Robertson with the History of the Heartland Project, and tonight we have the pleasure of speaking with Tom Steinhart. Tom is an Army veteran, and Tom, we were talking about your experiences a little bit earlier, but you enlisted in the Army in 1965, is that right?
Correct.
So this was I don't know if it was the peak of the Vietnam War, but the Vietnam War was certainly gearing up.
We just landed the first combat troops about a month before I went in.
So what was your thought process in terms of volunteering at that point?
Well, I hadn't done good in high school, so really didn't think I was going to have any chance of getting into college and didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd been talking to the recruiters for a while beforehand. Knew somebody that had gone into the Navy, or the Navy nuclear program, so I was talking to the Navy recruiter about that, and I couldn't get him to admit that you ended up doing 6 years. For it. He just said, "Oh, it's a 4-year enlistment." Yeah, but you got to extend for 2 more years before they'll send you to the school. So I kind of figured if he's lying to me about something I'm indicating I'm familiar with and I don't care, what else is he lying to me about?
Yeah.
So I was talking to the Army recruiter, and he was telling me about the Army Security Agency, and it sounded like it had some good training in it. So I signed up for that instead. Another 4-year enlistment. But
now, so this was the Army Security Agency, which is an agency that I was not familiar with at all.
They got rid of that in 1976.
And what was the function of the Army Security Agency?
Mostly signals intercept.
Okay.
Listening for radio messages and decoding them or gathering information from it. The area I was in was unusual, and I'm guessing after 50 years I probably I'm not violating any security clearance stuff. Ours was, like I mentioned earlier, microbarograph equipment repair and operations. We were listening for bombs, nuclear weapon testing.
I see.
A nuclear bomb going off in the atmosphere will send a shockwave around the world. The bigger the bomb, more pressure, and the more times around the world it goes.
I see. So your training for this must have been, what did it entail to prepare you to do that?
Actually, it was, for the most part, basic electronics training. Of course, this goes back, the equipment was tube driven, we didn't have anything there. And
where did that happen?
At Fort Devens, Massachusetts. So, I mentioned my class combined maintenance of the equipment as well as operating it.
I see.
Once before us had just been a little bit shorter, but okay, we don't know what these guys are doing operate the thing other than we know they're breaking it. And I had to basic electronics training, then here's how the signals get processed. And when I say it was a sound detection system, but really, that all happened before it got to my end, because basically you're looking at a very sensitive microphone. And then went to a central station. I had the fun of, I can take this recorder apart and put it back together. Sometimes I don't even have any pieces left over. Odd thing on that was, when I started working up at Clinton Power Station, we were actually using one of those old things that I had trained in 12 years earlier. And people didn't listen to me when I told them to be very careful when you take this piece apart.
Well, then the Army must have had an inkling of your aptitudes before they wouldn't randomly assign you to that job, right?
They had given me set me up for some other course in the agency. I don't remember what it was. I came in one day on basic training, and here's a set of orders assigning you to this course at Fort Devens. And the next day, amended set of orders, deleting the first one, and you're off to this microbarograph equipment repair course.
Okay. And then how long were you there at Fort Devens?
Got there in August of '65 and left just before Christmas.
Okay.
So the timing worked out real nice, because we had a regimental commander was a Medal of Honor recipient from Korea. So a very gung-ho individual. And obviously by this time, becoming more aware of what's going on in Vietnam. They went from, well, if you're going to Vietnam, you had to go through special training, to anybody graduating from or leaving the school had to go through an escape and evasion course. Mm-hmm. But my class ended just as they were coming up on the Christmas leave period, and I'm supposed to be in Turkey in January, so they don't have time to pull me out for a week on this, so I avoided that one.
That'd be a good one to avoid in January.
Oh, yeah. Run around out in the woods and get captured.
Yeah. So obviously Turkey must have been a key listening point, with its proximity to the Soviet Union at the time. And so you got orders pretty much right away right into Turkey.
Yeah. Interesting thing on that, my little pin here, my patch from the Art Security Agency. I got the word before I got over there is we weren't supposed to be wearing that patch or the military intelligence brass. I don't know who they thought they were fooling by having all these people fly in that are wearing it, and suddenly they all aren't wearing it anymore. And I know, where I was stationed was just outside of Ankara.
Okay.
And there was another installation up on the Black Sea, and I think there was another one of our groups down in on the Med.
I see. And what was that experience like in Turkey?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
One of the things you hear from some of the military people is, these guys, they're the two best assignments of their last one and the next one. They don't like the one they're on. I found it interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, what did you expect, and how was reality different from what you expected?
Other than, I wasn't used to working shift work, so I got in there and got onto that right away. And the funny thing was, it's been long enough now, I don't recall the exact sequence on things. Our listening points for picking up these signals were up to 10 miles away from the central building. Mm-hmm. So, of course, that's coming in on regular signal cables. Mm-hmm. So for a while I got to be the assistant to the lineman climbing up and down the poles to maintain this stuff. We were having to reroute one because the Turks were damming up a valley that we had our line running through, so we had to move everything around.
I see.
And actually, I guess I just did that for a couple months because we had a sergeant that decided to help us one day, and we ended up with most of a quarter mile of very heavy cable all tangled up in the middle of the road because of his genius idea how we should run it out instead of listening to the guy that's been trained as a lineman, and here's the right way to do it. And then I went over to operations side. We'd work 3 days of days, 3 days of swings, have a day off, 3 days of mids, and get 2 days off.
Now, when you say you worked in operations, you were monitoring the signals.
I was monitoring the signals
point.
coming in.
Okay.
Sitting in a room probably about 15 by 20, and other than Monday through Friday when the rest of the people around the place.
Was it a permanent building, or was it okay?
In fact, I've got a picture here of it if you want to. Let's see. Well, that was the brick factory going up to it, and a couple of aerial shots of the. Coming through the gate into the compound.
So you got
a relay tower I
fence
climbed
and a
up
gate
and a couple of Turk guards.
Yeah.
Check in there.
A little slung building.
And
it looks pretty desolate there.
we were out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Well, here's the approach to the compound. Once we're in there, and that was actually 2 units. Tuzlog detachment, 17 and 18. I think Tuzlog was like Turkey U.S. Logistics, something like that.
It was like a cover.
Yeah. No, that was just everybody in there was a Tuzlog unit.
Okay.
Det 17 was the Army unit, and Det 18 was the Air Force unit. They were doing basically the same type of thing, but where we just had the one system for listening for the bombs. I'm not sure how many they had, but they gave alphabetical designators on them, and they were up to using 2 lighters, so
I see.
They had a lot of them.
Well, so this must have been, most of the time, nothing happening, right? Because nuclear bombs weren't going off every day.
Sitting there in a room with, about 15 by 20, right about the time I got there, they did put in a record player and AM/FM radio, so you could drive. Except any AM/FM radio in the area is going to be Turkish.
Right.
And then we had a military radio. It's called an R390 shortwave radio. And I think it was just once a day we had to tune in the National Bureau of Standards time tick so we could make sure our clock was set right. It always gained about 6 seconds a day. The rest of the time you could tune in shortwave American broadcasts.
And did you ever detect an actual event?
Never when I was on.
Okay.
No. Did get some big signals in there occasionally because one of our pickups was near a Turkish military airfield, so you could tell when a plane went over.
Oh.
Yeah, picked up the pressure wave of that.
Sure.
And just storm was coming in or whatever. That was part of my training was, is this a real signal or not?
To be able to discriminate between the real thing and
they don't appreciate getting called out in the middle of the night for something coming in that doesn't exist.
So how long was that tour then?
18 months.
18 months.
Just a little bit short of a couple weeks short.
So that was like into 67 or so, somewhere in there?
I left there in June of 67, right after the Six-Day War.
Okay.
We were nervous on that because there were 3 flights. We flew Pan Am, commercial flights.
Okay.
And there were 3 flights a week. The Six-Day War started. First flight that week was diverted to Libya or something to bring civilians out.
Oh.
And the rest of us are going, okay, are we going to get out of here on time or not? But
right.
Managed to get out okay.
Okay.
And I went down to, I took a 45-day leave when I came home. Then went down to Fort Huachuca, Arizona for a year and a day.
A year and a day. And what did you do there? Was it the same mission?
Similar equipment, but we were experimenting to see if it could be used to detect missile launches.
Oh.
So that one I don't know if we were picking up signals or not. We were sitting there monitoring stuff coming out of launches from White Sands, Vandenberg, and very optimistically Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy.
Okay.
And that was a much weaker signal.
Right.
We're sitting there and really having to train for what are we looking for on this one.
Yeah. So that was more or less experimental then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we did. We'd sit there and wait for them to launch, and we had a certain amount of time we had to wait for the signal to get to us. And if it was a night mission, then okay, since it's over, bundle everything up and mail it to Vint Hill Farm Station in Virginia, and they did the analysis.
I see. And you were there for a year and a day. So that takes you now to 1968, and throughout this time, the military is getting larger and larger, and supposing scaling up. And did you get another assignment there with the security agency?
I've got to back up now because when I was over in Turkey, just one of these bitches come in one day, and we're a small unit. I don't think we had 20 people. I know we didn't have 20 people in. So I came in one day for the swing shift, and the station chief, he'd been first sergeant in a bigger company, greeted me, and I made some comment about I should have joined the Navy. I was wondering why. Because I'd still be in school, and went through the nuclear program routine. And, Army's got a nuclear power program.
Oh.
That was the first I found out about.
That's interesting.
So then I started looking into how do I get into it.
I see.
And I couldn't really tell you when this happened. I mean, it took me a while to get going on things. I think, don't remember, I had to take a test for it, or it was just strictly an application on it. And then I went back, came to Fort Huachuca, and had everything completed, turned it in, and couldn't go. I'm trying to remember if it was because I had been promoted too recently, because I made E5 while I was over in Turkey, or if it was because I had done a permanent change of station too recently.
Okay.
So as soon as I was eligible the next time around,
that was the year and a day then, probably.
Yeah, that was the year. Yeah.
Okay. And you must have already had a lot of the clearances that were needed because obviously the Army Security Agency would have required
crypto clearance.
A lot of clearances. Yeah.
On the back shifts, I never did figure out why, but at least it broke up the night. On the back shifts, the Army guy would go in and take care of the communications room. There's a bunch of teletypes sitting there for messages coming in. 90% of them, as far as I could tell, came in for the Air Force, but they only took care of it during the daytime. And they had more people around, so I So I got accepted for the Army Nuclear School, and trying to think, took a couple weeks leave and got to Fort Belvoir, Virginia in August of '68. It was in what we call Class 68-2, second class of 68.
Okay, very good. And so you're going through Army Nuke School there. Mm-hmm. How long did that go?
Well, that depended on which of the 4 MOSs you got.
Okay.
They had, it was 52 H, J, K, and L. H was mechanic, J was electrician, K was instrumentation, and L was radiation physics, health physics. And of course, each one of us consider ourselves to be the best of the group.
Which one of the 4 were you?
K.
K. So that was instrumentation.
And I came across something the other day that was a list of Army MOSs. I said, "Oh, is this going to be in there?" Because I mean, this hasn't been around for 40 years, and they called it instructor because somebody abbreviated instrumentation with INSTR.
I see.
So, no, we had instructors for all 4 groups that were in that MOS. But of course, we can argue it with anyway.
Right.
No big deal. The school was officially 52 weeks long. Mechanics finished up a couple weeks early, and they'd find something for me to do until we graduated. The electricians and the RP techs finished up right about graduation time. And I graduated and then had 3 more months of training to go through. So we classed as postgraduate. So it was December of '69 before I finished up.
Okay. So then you were officially nuclear qualified at that point.
Very loosely speaking, yeah. The school was 4 years of what they call the academic phase, and that started out with, we're going to teach you basic math, because some people just need the refresher on it, on up to just touching on the calculus.
Okay.
Plus, they called it mechanical engineering, but we had a guy in our class that had just gotten out of mechanical engineering school that the Army paid for, and then they sent me this way. He said, well, that's basically thermodynamics scores, and electronics, reactor physics. I remember there were 6 of them in there. And of course, the physics side of it, and I don't recall all, to be honest, anymore.
Sure.
You guys doing okay?
And then, of course, with the instrumentation, the first part of it was pretty much electronics again, except in a lot more detail than we had gotten when I was in the security agency.
Yeah. Did they have a nuclear plant there?
Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Okay. Okay.
Army reactor SM1.
All right. So we're looking at a picture of a low single-story building with kind of a little dome there. Was that dome? I guess was over the reactor.
Was the dome over the containment.
Oh, okay.
It's actually the first nuclear reactor to have a containment structure. First one to go critical in the U.S.
I see.
Beat shipping port by a couple of months. The first one to be hooked into a power grid.
Huh.
First one to have stainless steel cladding on stuff.
Interesting. Wow.
It was 57 it went critical. Of course, I didn't get there till 68.
Right. So you were trained on basically the first nuclear plant.
I said the first 4 months was academic training. The next 4 months was operator training. So I got to go down there and run around in there. And I was lucky. My whole class was small compared to what some of the others had been on. And then my shift only had 4 people on it.
Okay.
Of students. So really trained on 2 positions. Control room operator or equipment operator. So 1 student would be in each of those positions, and then 1 other student would shadow. So if you had 5 or 6, then it started getting a little harder. Otherwise, it was moving into, one day I'm watching you, the next day I'm doing your job, the next day I'm in the control room watching him do it, the next day I'm doing that job.
Right. Well, so what was the Army's vision of the role of these plants? Was it power generation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I showed you the picture of the floating reactor.
Yeah.
That was our very last one.
Okay.
And I'm trying to avoid getting into lecture mode here, and it's a little hard to.
Sure.
The Army had the SM plants, the PM plants, and an MH and an ML. The S, M, and P. S was stationary, M was mobile,
I see.
and P was portable.
Mm-hmm.
Which portable only in the sense that we kind of make a modular unit and take it someplace and set it up, and after that it's going to stay in there. Then the next letter is either going to be a L, M, or H for low power, medium power, or high power. By today's standards, even high power is laughable. It was below 2 megawatts, between 2 megawatts and 10 megawatts, and above 10. And I noticed everyone I got the whatever designator was just barely into the field that I would bring it up.
Okay. And you must have then been posted to the Panama Canal Zone right after that, or?
Well, I got out. Like I said, I finished the training in '69, then went down to the instrument shop in the SM1. Ended up, they needed people doing temporary duty we had a nuclear reactor at Fort Greely, Alaska.
Oh.
And I went up there, not really sure what the whole project was. It was just one of those things, so we got work being done and we need some bodies for it. Tom, here's the test rig that you're going to have to figure out how to work and test the gear on it.
So where was Fort Greely?
About the middle of the state.
Okay, so was it kind of in the middle of nowhere then? Or? Okay.
And actually that reactor is still there, shut down, but there's only one, I think, well, there's two of them. The SM1 is still in existence. And
how did you get there?
Flew into, I think it was Fairbanks, and then somebody from the unit met me and drove me.
Okay, so it was a long drive.
Yeah.
Was it summertime when you went there, or?
I got there just after June 21st, longest day of the year.
All right, so peak summer. Yeah.
Because they already knew when I went up there that they were getting ready to send me down to Panama.
Okay.
So it was, as soon as you come back from the TDY, you're going to go to Panama. If you want to take leave, you got to take it before you go up there.
Right.
And when I was making travel arrangements, I found out that the flight I was scheduled to for Alaska was booking up quick, and I tried warning them that get your tickets in now for the rest of the guys on the TDY. They didn't, so I spent an extra week at home, then still ended up getting up there before the rest of the crew did. And then we had one of those guys there just kept complaining the whole time up there that he couldn't get to sleep at night. Tom, lend me your blanket so I can cover up the window. And you're the guy who can't sleep. You cover it up. You know?
Yeah, that must have been a very short night, huh?
Hour and a half.
Wow.
And it never got dark.
Yeah.
I mean, the sun went down over here and came up over here.
Yeah.
Their big thing on that shortest night of the year, longest day of the year, is they had a midnight baseball game. So like I said, I was there about 4 or 5 weeks. Got lucky when I came back because of that interruption with the delay of the flights. There was about 5 days leave they never charged me for. So. Because it should have been, well, I don't know, you can argue both ways, because it wasn't my fault they got held over, but it was counted on it.
So then you went from, Alaska to tropical canal zone.
So we went down to Charleston to fly out of there.
Okay.
Part of the military air transport flight down.
Okay.
And I forget, spent about 4 or 5 days there processing, and, seeing if they can get room on a plane and figure out busy work for us to do. Unfortunately, I'm an E5, so I just get to supervise people doing the busy work.
Yeah. And the Army already had a nuclear reactor there that was up?
Yes, I don't know. I have some pictures of that thing, and I don't know what it is. I showed you the small one that's hard to spot. That left Fort Belvoir, went down the canal zone just before I got to Fort Belvoir.
And that was a shipboard.
That was a
barge, or
it was a barge.
A barge,
It could not,
right?
And there was somebody did supposedly do some calculations that, well, if you opened up the water intakes and ran all the pumps, you could actually make it into a jet boat, but at about 4 knots, I think they figured. You get to crank the valves around to steer it.
And was this actually in the canal?
It was in Gatun Lake.
Okay.
The Panama Canal runs north and south, not east and west.
Okay.
Gatun Lake is at the north end, the Atlantic end.
I see.
And we were right near those locks. And I guess I missed the excitement when I went down there on one of my trips. I forget which one it was, but somebody almost rammed it one time. The Canal Zone pilots got the bad habit of using it as a guide marker.
Oh.
So, line up on this, start heading towards it, and at this point you turn, and something went wrong and you didn't turn.
Just a turn.
The guys that we had in the unit that were scuba divers said you could see where the front end of that vessel went into the dirt right behind us.
Wow. Must have been excitement, huh?
So then I got down there. It was in August, and I'm trying to remember, maybe after about a week I came over, got through in processing at the Pacific end, and they brought me over to the Sturgis.
So that was what, mid '69 by that time, or
70.
70? Okay.
Yeah, because I got graduated in '69, and then it was mid '70 they went down there. So in about August of '70 I was down there. And of course, we're starting to run into almost 50 years ago. I'm trying to remember exact sequences on some things, especially since I was there twice.
Yeah.
I was in the instrument shop, which was right below the main control room for the plant. In fact, to get to it, I had to go through the control room. So, of course, since if you can't tell, I like to talk. So if not much was going on, I'd go up and see what's happening in the control room. And I don't remember exactly what was going on one day, or what happened. They were having some kind of problems with the power, the instrument control power.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a sloppy design after this incident, got redesigned. So they were trying to bring the emergency diesels up, take the reactor off the line.
I see.
And they were having problems getting the stuff synchronized. And I'm just standing on the back of the room looking, oh wow, what's the shift supervisor and control room operator are flipping dials on what's going on. All of a sudden, shift supervisor goes over and opens up a panel and says, Tom, come over here. Hold these relays in. There's 6 relays there, and he has me put my fingers and push in for them so they cannot release. And okay, I'm fine, I'm going to do it. You're an E7, I'm an E5. You're supposed to know what you're doing. And I finally have to take a look, and they're called the scram relays. Scramming reactor is what shuts it down. I'm holding him in. We cannot scram the reactor.
Oh my goodness.
Or cannot accidentally, which is what he was afraid of. A signal would come through that would trip it off or whatever.
Right.
And I was bringing up in the design, there was one time during the startup, as they heated up, they would flip a switch on one of the recorders to expand the range, and occasionally that would put noise in the system, so they allowed them to do this little trick.
Right.
Next time I was down there, they had changed that design, so here's the full range and here's the expanded range recorders, the separate ones. So I'm holding this in, and I can't really hear what he's saying up there. I mean, they aren't yelling it. And I see the the control room operator reach up and hit the scram button. And I'm sure it was just a few seconds. I'm going, nothing's going to happen. Hey, Dave, can I let go now?
Yeah.
Off of there. And that was probably about October or November. December, I was sent to the other end of the canal zone where we had our gas turbine floating power plant.
Oh.
So, that doesn't count as a PCS because it's too short a distance. And after I get there, they say, oh yeah, it was longer. You should have gotten travel pay for it and all. Yeah. So I can't prove it, but I have this feeling that get rid of a little bit of an embarrassment. So Dave was a rather loudmouth. That was a good experience on that end too. So.
Yeah. So that you hadn't been any training in gas turbines, but you got to learn it on the job, so to speak.
Well, gas turbine, that's mechanics get to work on that. It's still the instrumentation. And some of that was, I was learning, here's what it does, let me figure it out.
Okay. Instrumentation is basically the same
similar type of stuff, yeah. If they got the manuals here, I can read it. There was already a man there who knew it, so he and I worked together, and he familiarized me with enough of it to figure out what was going on.
Yeah. So how long did that tour last?
That was 18 months. Again, an 18-month tour. Well, again, I cut short a little bit because I was finishing up in '72, and they were starting to reduce forces in Vietnam at that time.
Okay.
So they came up with anybody who had less than 6 months to go in the Army was to be discharged as soon as possible, the closer you were to your discharge date. But that didn't apply to me because by that time I'm 86, so I'm classed as career status plus on the second enlistment.
Right.
And it was only supposed to be for first-timers.
Right.
So fine. I go trotting in one day I'm looking for my orders for going home, and I get some second lieutenant that, oh my God, you're within 6 months, and you should be, okay, just get me out of here quicker. I'll go back and re-enlist,
Yeah.
And came back in January. You're commenting about going from Alaska to Panama.
Yeah.
I came back from Panama to Virginia in January.
Okay. So thermal shock, huh?
And it got to get a little chilly. I didn't really have too much in the way of heavy clothing with me on it.
So did they discharge you then?
Well, I still had time to go on my hitch. Like I said, I was in career status.
Yeah.
So I was moved over to training department.
Okay.
Instrument training. And trying to think get the times right on it, because actually even on that 6 months ago I was pushing a little bit because I think my time would have been, up the end of July. So I re-enlisted a little bit early and got engaged. And started out as a blind date on one of my trips home, and ended up eventually getting married to the young lady, or still married. And after I re-enlisted there, she came down. Actually, we were originally planning, but she'd come down about the time I re-enlisted, and I just stopped and get it re-enlisted and get it out of the way, and then we don't have that distracting. And shuffled around in a couple places in training. And then got moved over to a liaison position for working primarily with the gas turbine plant, but also helping out some on the nuclear one as needed. And then got to stop and think now, getting my dates right. I came back in '72, so it was '74 that I went back down to Panama.
Okay, so for your second tour.
For a second tour, right.
And were you in a similar role?
Instrumentation again.
Yeah.
And I said one of the things I was trying to remember on the first bit there is whether I'd done any planned operations training at that time or not. But I mean, obviously I was only there for a few months, so. And I know when I had my little hold in the relays, I was still in the shop, so probably hadn't been. And see, on my first tour when I was on the gas turbine plant was when I made E8, or excuse me, E6. Getting optimistic here. So on my second tour in Panama, then they did work in the maintenance shop for a while, and they also trained me as a reactor. Well, I mentioned earlier on the schooling, you had equipment operator, controller operator, so I started equipment operator training. And then at some point along there, and I really couldn't tell you when it happened, They had my equipment operator on shift for a year or so, and don't recall. Well, they started training me as a control room operator. So I pulled some shifts in the control room. Yeah, here's what you're doing, all that. Got to the point where then they had to send me back to the States because they train you on what they call a control room simulator. So you can make your mistakes on here instead of messing up the plant. I got through the training on that. Came back. We shut the plant down for a major modification. They were going to put in a new something called an emergency core cooling system. And somewhere along here, they decided we were short of control room operators. So they took me and 2 other guys and qualified us as control room operator with the stipulation that as long as we don't do anything to the reactor. The reactor shut down, you don't try to bring it up and do anything with it. You know, they called it control room operator cold iron.
Okay.
Or first class operator cold iron. And somewhere along there, Senator Proxmire decided that this was a military boondoggle. We don't need nuclear power plants. I understand there was, at one point, there had been talk of putting the floating nuclear plant in Vietnam. But, oh my God, something nuclear in Vietnam. Plus, it would be very vulnerable to...
Sure.
I mean, they can't go up like a bomb, but you still don't... If nothing else, it's the bad public relations if something happened to it. So, we never started it back up again. They pulled all the fuel off of it late 76, and just after Christmas of 77 they towed it out of there. I spent about 3 weeks helping clean up our site, clearing up all the, well, we didn't have buildings there, we had trailers, so I had to clean up all that, get that cleared up, and they brought us back to the States. So again, fun. January, come back to Wisconsin. And that was cold that winter. Went home on leave, and my folks were down south for the winter, but I had keys for the house. My mother's car had square tires because they'd been sitting there freezing so long. You're familiar with that phenomenon. Yeah. And then went down back to Fort Belvoir. Waited for the floating plant to be brought back there, and it was in bad shape. They hadn't believed the Coast Guard of don't really try a tow across Cape Hatteras in January. So she took a couple bad rolls, gear broke loose, and one of E7 I'd been working before we took it out of Panama. I was on the crew that we're anchoring everything down that we can in this area, and we put in extras. You know, we aren't just worrying about the places that pull down. We're going to run some cable ties over this. And he had to go testify before some investigating committee about why did this stuff break free. And we don't know. We exceeded design requirements to do it, but we had stuff bust free and go sliding around in there.
Okay. So it was pretty badly banged up then.
There was a big steel and lead plug that would, during certain evolutions, you got the top off the reactor, you put this in place to seal it up. And that had busted free and just really tore a heck out of that deck. And finally, fortunately, where the area was sliding around, it was raised from the main passageway, and it broke through the wall into a passageway. Got cocked down there and didn't come out anymore. You know. And then came up with, well, we aren't going to do anything with the nuclear power program anymore. And we don't know what we're going to do with you guys. I wanted to extend, and for some reason I was told I either had to re-enlist or get out. So I knew somebody actually had been he'd been a sergeant major in the program. He was running a contracting outfit for nuclear plants called them up Friday afternoon, and Friday night I had a job.
I was going to say, by that time you really had punched some really valuable tickets, right? In terms of a career in the nuclear industry, you'd not only had the instrumentation, but you've been an operator, a control room trained, all that kind of stuff. So, took you, 12 hours to get a job?
Not even that. I mean,
not
it
even
was
that.
pretty much a call up. And
Yeah.
biggest delay was, okay, I've been working on my resume, and just for debating about doing the getting out thing anyway,
And
got to run it down to you just so you have somebody to show people.
yeah, and that was how you came to Decatur, because is that right?
Well, that was August, and then I went up to Vermont Yankee contracting work up there.
Oh, okay. So you
for
did some
a
work
refilling
there.
outage there. Did some work at Millstone Reactor. They were getting ready for doing some mod on it, I think. And I
So
was
we were
checking
doing
stuff out, and then
contract work at that time then?
Yeah.
Different plants, okay.
those two, and then interviewed here and got here started December 5th of 1977.
Who did you interview with, do you remember?
Steve Ritchie was the instrument and electrical supervisor at the time.
Okay. And next thing you know, you're on your way to the... And the plant didn't really exist at that point, right?
It was still
just
under
under construction. Yeah.
Yeah. So then started December, end of January, and like I said, I was sent over to Havana for checking out Unit 6 there. Spent a few months up there, and then came down here. They were moving people in, and even then, well, initially we were in... I remember if that building is even still there. We were in one of the temporary buildings around there, and then then we moved over to a warehouse. We had our maintenance office there, and I think it was like 1980 we ended up in the power plant.
Okay. So it was a good 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it like, when you started up? What was that experience like?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Well, was it a big deal, or was it part of the routine?
Everybody, we were impatient for wanting to get it going, get it started up.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what's all this going on. There were some glitches during construction of the plant that held them back for a while on it. But, and to be honest with you, I don't recall when initial criticality was. Late 84, early 85, I think.
Okay. So that's when you really...
Yeah, I mean, now we've got self-sustaining reaction, and even though, it works, everything's looking good, now we're going to shut it down and do a bunch of other things on it.
Yeah.
And of course, remember, that was supposed to be a 2-unit plant. So there are a lot of things you look around there and you go, well, this is big empty space because it's something that we're going to need for Unit 2, but it never got built.
Right. So you started it up, it worked, then you shut it down to kind of do the next...
Now you got to go in there and make sure nothing got damaged that you couldn't see.
Okay. And then how long till you actually got up in kind of continuous operation?
It was a few months, not too
Okay, just a
bad
matter
on
of
that.
months.
Yeah.
Okay. Did that change your life a lot when you went from the construction phase or the
I started
trial
out in the instrument
phase?
shop, and I want to say I was like the 9th man hired in for electrical maintenance.
Okay.
In there, so I'm fairly senior.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, I made foreman. We're still in the construction phase on it. And then they had an opening in maintenance training.
Okay.
And they offered it to me, which on an hourly rate was a pay raise. But with the overtime I was pulling, I took a pay cut, but at least now I'm going to be home on the weekends. And
Right. So the hours are more reasonable and predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. Except that was back out in the trailer again. So we didn't have area for training set up yet.
And you were training all the people that would eventually work in the maintenance
instrumentation.
and instrumentation.
When we'd have refueling outages, we'd bring in a ton of contractors, so there's a lot of the stuff just go in there and here's how our procedure system works, here's this thing and that thing on it. We built a training aid area over in one of the warehouses where you could, just different systems that, okay, here's a big mock-up of a piece of gear to work on. Well, that also then when we were doing training for these guys coming in, what's wrong with this, or here's how you do this type of thing.
Sure. Were there any big changes or shocks during those years of operation, or was it pretty much steady state?
It was pretty much steady state.
Yeah.
Obviously you're going to have some things that just aren't going to work right for you all the time.
Yeah, sure.
And again, we're looking far enough back, so nothing big enough to really attract my attention.
Yeah.
At least I didn't create any trouble for them on it. They had one thing I really enjoyed. We started out, and the plant did not use computers to run anything. Mm-hmm. In fact, Steve Ritchie's executive was, everything's human controlled. We don't have machines making decisions. And I mean, well, don't have a computer, but I figure an automatic controller is very close to this. You set up parameters, and it responds to them. Mm-hmm. And even though I will agree that a person can control better than that automatic controller can, but he doesn't get bored standing there looking at an unchanging situation.
Yeah.
Some of the equipment we had, and a automatic controller system on it, was basically a big relay bank that when these parameters get met, this happens and all that.
Sure.
And that became my baby to work on when I was get familiarized on it with training. So they sent me to school in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay.
GE Fanuc was calling it.
I see.
Don't ask me what the acronym was for something automatic numerical control or something like that. I worked on that, and then GE came up with it wasn't Fanuc. Fanuc was a replacement. It was still the same, except it was the computer for it, control unit for it was probably a foot deep and 2 feet across and 3 feet high, and, almost no memory capability to it. So they let me build a system for it, or a simulator area for it, and then they came up with a new and improved version that was a lot more solid state, and sent me off to school in, I think that was in Raleigh.
Okay.
So I like those trips. I get to go travel around in places on the weekend. And came back, and I convinced them to buy me 2 of them for training department. And one of my little games I was play with them, okay, how long, after I take power off this thing, how long will it retain the memory in there? GE would say if you pull this thing out with no battery on it, and I heard various numbers, but they were all under a minute to get at least the battery hooked back up to it. I don't know. After 3 weeks, I gave up playing with this stupid thing. Because I'm figuring, once I've hooked it up and it's still got the memory, now I've got to wait all this time again to try it. But I built a control box to mount this thing into, and just we can test various programs on it, and the students can come up with, here's how this works and all that. And somewhere along the line, we came up with winding a course on what they called self-checking, the STAR program, for Stop, Think, Act, and Review.
Okay.
Also known as C. Tom's Articulation Rendered. Shit, that ain't right. And the idea is, okay, here's an instruction to go flip this switch, turn this knob, or whatever. And you're supposed to stop, what am I going to do? Think about what can go wrong if I do this, then act, go do it, and then review what you have. And a lot of double checking yourself in here.
Sure.
So I built this box with, I think it was 32 switches on it. Very confusing labels on it. Actually, some other plant had done it, and I got a lot of their information and changed it because I'm not going to deliberately put in mistakes in the procedures which they had in theirs. I said, well, this is going to be a correctly written procedure.
Yeah.
It's just going to be, you're looking for switch SFH. Well, S and F can sound very similar to each other, so I got switch SFH and FSH, this kind of thing in there.
Right, yeah.
And I even put a time delay in there, so I know the other one had to flip the switch, and now you've got 15 seconds to find the next switch and throw it. And I said, after you throw the switch, you will have 15 seconds, so I'm giving them the heads up. And make them go through this with all these little switches and do it. And I got very lucky. And every time I'd write the program line, throw the switch, and it wasn't just flip, ding, 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 ding. It was this one here, 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 and here, and that kind of stuff. And every time I'd write a line of program for the system, run it in there and make sure it works the way I want it to, that you get the indications or whatever, then go put in the next one. So, I've got this thing memorized when I'm doing it.
Sure. So it's kind of designed to be foolproof, if you will. Or
yeah, well, I even set it up. Had a couple switches that I didn't use. So, one of them was put in a flip to reset the whole thing back to start.
I see.
And another was to flip this and check that everything was lined up right. They had reset, that the instructor had reset it properly.
Okay.
And then the very first person to go through it and get through it without making a mistake was the training department manager. And pure accident on it. My boss said, boy, you sure get a good political pure accident on it. And after that, anybody that came in had to pass that. Had to go through it.
Right.
And most of the time when we were doing this outage stuff, we'd set them up in two-man teams. One person's reading the procedure, the other guy finds a switch, then the first guy comes in and verifies.
Two-man rule kind of thing.
Two-man,
yeah.
I've never seen anybody get hopping mad before. One guy could not get past that spot of find the next switch within 15 seconds, or 20, whatever it was. It was, he'd flip it and then go looking for it. And they're so stupid. Well, sorry, but you've got to go do this. And finally, because they were working as a team, they swapped people.
Okay.
And I don't like doing it, but the way the rules were set up for it, I've got to let him get past on that. And I actually built two boxes, two different programs. So then I made one of my switches. Which one do you select so somebody can't just figure which box they're working on? And one of them, from someplace, I'd come across a little brass plate about. There's some quote in reference to the Titanic being perfectly infallible or whatever, and I stuck it up on it. But that gadget came in real handy because I could even use it for some of the stuff in trying to teach automatic control theory for how you tune this loop. Without trying to go into, and I'm probably going way off topic on you.
No, that's great.
One of the things I always do is your basic controller is a thermostat. But, you want to regulate temperature at 72 degrees, and it drops below this, closes, room starts to heat up, we're back on. On-off controller, and infinite gain because of either you've got the full signal or you don't, and there's other little things to get into on it. But, well, then, instead of doing it that way, if you want to regulate it at a certain level, and you have it set up so I'm going to go off from temperature here. We usually use it maintaining a tank level at some point. So, valve that's half open and water is pouring in just as fast as it's taking out. You maintain the level. Demand increases, you start sucking more water out, it drops off. You want to open up that valve, but you don't want to slam it full open. And how much it opens depends on various settings you have. But you'll find out, first of all, it won't respond immediately, so it's going to drop some. And then once the filling opens up enough to balance out the what's taken out, it stops adding more water.
I see.
Actually, it'll usually overshoot a little and bring back up,
Yeah.
but you aren't going to be back at your set point,
Right.
what they call offset. So then there's another function that they throw in that says, oh, I'm not back where you want it, so I start opening the valve up more and more. And when you get back here, now I got to keep from overshooting too much.
Right. So this was a useful tool to
I could build that in
teach
there.
control
Teach that
theory. Yeah.
And then there's even a third one in there of, well, how fast does it change? Maybe I got to slam it open real quick,
I see.
and you don't want to overdo it.
So really, pretty much all
All my stuff was,
the instrumentation people you trained that were working there at one point or another, other than the first 8.
well, there was instrument and electrician. Now it's the rarity up there because almost all the others were Navy nukes.
Yeah. Yeah. The Navy probably had a much larger nuclear program.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of my 12 years in the service, I kind of fit in the middle because you had the guys that did their 20,
Right. Yeah.
so they're all
Yeah.
40 or 50
Yeah.
running around in there, and then you got the guys that just did their
Did
6
1
and
tour.
got out.
Yeah.
So they're younger than me, and I'm the one in the middle.
Right. Right. So is that a good place to be? Because you're kind of uniquely positioned in a way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them, it got into, come on, kid, what are you up to? type thing. One thing I did notice, once we got them through their basic qualifications up there for, I don't recall exactly, the instrumentation man or electrician, they got at the time was I believe a 50-cent an hour pay raise, which nowadays it's not that $1,000 a year, extra $1,000 a year.
A lot more money back then, yeah.
Yeah, all the military people, whether they'd been nuke or just had military experience, boy, they were working on it, trying to get it.
Yeah.
They had one guy come in that he basically a college dropout in engineering and got into the field and all that, and his attitude was kind of, well, I don't make it. No, and I'm pushing, trying to get this guy through.
Sure.
This is my job. Listen.
Yeah.
That's why I go, well, what's the big deal? I might still work in here. I'll just have to keep coming through on this. And I'm not sure how long they would have kept him with that attitude anyway, but I point out, but it's an extra 50 cents an hour. He says, yeah, it's only 50 cents. Okay, you did not have to make it on low military pay.
Yeah. Different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did the situation change there at some point? Were they, either the state of the company or the operation must have been pretty steady, right, at the plant itself?
Yeah. Well, the new plants, you get them running and you want to run them.
Yeah.
Pretty
Run
much
them flat
full.
out. Yeah.
Full demand. They're something you can't switch on and off real easily.
Yeah.
And trying to remember what the heck happened. There was we had a real long shutdown in there, and I'm trying to remember what was wrong on that one. Right about the time they sold us.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. So it was sold to, was it Exelon or?
Well, it was sold to Amergent, which was
Okay.
Commonwealth Edison at the time.
Oh,
and
that's right.
British,
Yeah.
and no, not Commonwealth, Pico, Philadelphia Electric, and British Energy,
Oh, okay.
and then that got merged with
With
Commonwealth and
ComEd.
became Excellent.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, there was a series, wasn't there, of consolidations in the
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
And
So you actually, even though you were doing the same job, you were working for different companies.
right now, I get two retirement checks.
Really?
This Ameren, which Illinois Power sold us to Amergin
Uh-huh.
and merged or was acquired by Dynegy, depending on your point of view. Then Dynegy went bankrupt, and Ameren picked up the Illinois Power
I see.
side of stuff with all its obligations.
Yeah.
So the bit it's weird is because the way they did the early retirement offer, anybody that was 55 by the end of 2001 was offered retirement.
Was this from Ameren then? Or?
This was from Amergin,
Okay.
which eventually becomes Exelon.
I see.
They were added 5 years to your age, 5 years of service. So I had 23 years and turned 55 in 2001. Most of the people that took it were salaried people. There was some glitch with how they were going to handle it for the union people that didn't come out quite as good.
Okay.
I think the last one that did his birthday was December 28th of 2001. He turned 55.
Okay.
He got right in under the wire.
Yeah.
And so I did 22 years with Amarin, I can remember, about 15 months with Amergin, or with Exelon, but because of as far as Dynegy and working concerned, I retired at 55, and all I get with 22 years from them, and I'm sorry, this is all you get for doing that. So Exelon had to make up the difference.
I see. They actually split the retirement. Okay, that's interesting.
And I fall under the now the Amarin retirement or health plan.
Okay.
Which is played games with a little while ago, but so I know. And one of the restrictions that I had when I left there is I couldn't come back, even as a contractor, for at least a year. They didn't want anybody checking out the job, and I'm the only one that can fix this and come back right away.
Right.
There was some question then when Exelon acquired Amergin about, well, we had people that left and went up to work for them. Sorry about that. And I think there was Exelon had a policy of they didn't allow retirees to work more than I think it was 1,000 hours a year for them.
Okay.
But that didn't apply to me because I left before Exelon got into it.
Right.
So several times I came back with them and had to argue with, no, you don't get to lay me off in 6 months. I get to be here until my time runs out. So they did call me up to want to know if I wanted to come back to work a refueling outage just short of a year. And I can't come back. Well, we get around that. And then came up with what they told me was going to be 6 months. Somebody misspoke and it was 6 weeks. I said, no, I had problems getting a permanent job for a while because I didn't want to go back to contracting, which is what I ended up doing anyway. But took various jobs, and I just got one other place in the south side of town. So, okay, then a year later they called me up and, well, we've got a job here for planning for an outage. Do you want it? Okay, I'll take it. This is going to be longer than just working a refueling outage. Came back, worked for them for about 6 months, and then just basically started contracting for other places.
Okay. So you did nuclear work with other plants then? Yeah.
And then eventually came back to, I'm making enough money here with the pension and that, and I'm coming back, and at times, I think I did 15, 16 months at a stretch once. I averaged about 6 months a year from the time I retired until I finally said, nope, I'm done with it. I don't want to come anymore.
Well, you had a really long and interesting career from the original training that you got in the Army, based on that initial conversation that you had with, I guess, one of your supervisors about your interest in the nuclear program that really blossomed into a long and productive career.
In some ways, I regret not having done the 20.
Yeah.
But timing was good.
Right.
77.
Right.
I mean, Clinton was one of the last plants constructed, so I would have been able to hire on at one.
Yeah.
But because I got in there early enough, I make foreman.
Right. It was kind of a sweet spot. Yeah.
Apparently, I impressed people enough with what I was doing that we can use him in training.
Yeah. Right. So
bump up in there.
Timing was good. I did want to talk to you a bit about your. I'm kind of shifting here, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your collection of military memorabilia.
No, I'm not really sure I got a lot of memorabilia, but I got a couple of odd ones.
Okay.
I said on the 4 pins in my hat. The Army doesn't recognize any of them anymore.
Okay, and those are associated with both of your MOSs, which no
Well-
longer exist, right?
Right. Okay, that was the Army Security Agency patch.
I see.
And like I say, they got rid of that in '76.
Uh-huh.
I think now it's the Army Security and Intelligence Command or something like
see.
that. I mean,
I see.
they didn't get rid of the idea, it's just
Just
a different way of handling things.
yeah.
And Specialist 6, well, they got rid of that in, I think, '86.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't. Officially, Specialist ranks went up to Spec 9.
Okay.
But from what I've read, they never promoted anybody that high, and there was some argument about if they did any Spec 8s.
I see.
My unit has some Spec 7s, and I can recall Army Times having an article at one time, well, all the Spec 7s are gone, and one of them wrote a letter to them saying, I'm still here. Well, we met in the combat fields. So now they just have the Specialist 4.
I see.
Or well, Specialist, they just call it.
And this is the barge?
I'm not even sure that was really authorized, but the colonel said we could wear it.
Okay. Floating nuclear power plant in the Sturgis. Is that the name of the barge? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you get
MH-1A was the power plant, and the Sturgis was the whole barge.
Gotcha. And okay.
Unfortunately, when they reduced, because we had a big seal or whatever you want to call it, and you can barely make them out, and there was a crane on the front and the back.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they were still there.
Okay.
And on the original diagram that was used, the aft crane, the one to your left as you're looking at it, had the letter P hanging from it. The other one had the letter S because it was supposed to be the program saver. And then the last one down there is the first-class nuclear reactor operator.
Okay, fantastic. So when you completed your qualifications, you got that, or?
Well, that was one of these little fun glitches, because I decided to get out fairly quick.
Yeah.
And my discharge date actually was a Saturday. So Friday afternoon I show up at post headquarters. Here's your DD-214, and I really didn't proofread it as carefully as I could. Plus there's kind of an attitude of, I'm out of here, I don't care, right? So I had some mistakes on it. One of them was that it didn't have my birth date on it, and the other was that it only showed me as having the basic nuclear reactor badge.
Oh.
Well, I was kind of running on the attitude, since this had the restriction of being cold iron, but I'm entitled to the first class badge, not the second class badge, which I want to put that little pouchy thing. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's the second class badge.
Okay.
And the basic badge, then it gets confusing because it said you had nuclear reactor operator, a nuclear reactor operator second class, which sounds to me like you're dropping in in first class.
I see.
And this one really should be that same dull finish. The basic badge didn't have the wreath around it.
I see.
And then this, I used to have a full set of them. The fancy gold one, that's the nuclear reactor operator chef supervisor.
I see.
52M.
I see.
I didn't mention that in the school thing because you had to go through and become a shift supervisor qualified in plants.
Yeah, they got the whole sequence there.
So a while back, I went down to Kathy Paulus and was talking to her about probably how to get that 214 corrected. Because the birth date is one of those things they like to try checking on when they're verifying it.
Right.
So I do that. So while I'm at it, get the badge upgraded to the second class, and she was looking around at all the orders I had, and well, they mentioned this first class badge, and she looks up, and the reg they cited to make me that cold iron was the one to be awarded the badge.
Okay, fantastic.
So when I got the updated one, then I started looking for it, and all I can find is the shiny version. I'd like to.
Sure.
And we actually still, the Army Nuclear, the Army Nuclear Power Program, even though it's a tri-service group, Army trained them all. We still have reunions every couple of years.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And at some point, there's a split between the Army and the Navy people. I don't know what happened on that. It was before I even found out that they had this alumni group. And we used to call ourselves the United States Armed Forces Nuclear Energy Association. Then the Navy nukes split off from it. And last year they finally said, this is silly, let's get back together. But there was some question because we even had a few civilians running around on here. Plus, we're recognizing anybody to help the program, whether you were nuclear qualified or not. You were working with us, so we've now changed our name to Belvoir Nukes to recognize everybody that came through.
Okay. That's fantastic. So is that every year then that you get together?
Well, it had been the Army side of it was doing it every other year, and I think the Navy was doing theirs on the in-between years.
Oh.
So now the Army did it last year at Louisville, Kentucky, and we voted, we're going to combine and change the name, and this September we're going to be what it originally started as being a Navy one in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Okay, fantastic.
And start working on, okay, now we got to combine our treasuries and get everything hammered out exactly what we're doing.
Very good. Well, that's fantastic. Well, Tom, I really appreciate your spending time with us this evening.
Well, as you can tell, I like talking about it. This is...
It's history that very few people, and this is a very small group. Both of the groups that you were with were not large groups.
Well,
and it's a piece of history that most people are not aware
I
of.
want to say about 1,300 people went through the Army Nuke School.
Yeah, very
It was
small.
Army, Navy, Air Force, and we had a couple civilians wander around. Do you remember a civilian ship, the nuclear ship Savannah?
Yes.
When I was going through the... I can't remember if it was my class or it was when I was training in the instrument training department. We had a couple of people that were going to be instrumentation on the Savannah.
Well, actually, my first boss in the Navy, my first department head, was the commanding officer of the Savannah and decommissioned it.
Okay. Because that was a civilian ship. That was the...
Well, he was a nuke, so he went through the nuclear program.
And they got tied in there somehow.
And I guess when they needed to shut it down, he was tasked with shutting it down.
Because I mentioned that I'd been back aboard the Sturgis. One of the reunions that we had, I think it was the Williams were going, they were talking about they were hiring people to do something they called characterization. I know I say it, Tom's articulation rendered on it. And it was essentially they were just going to put a bunch of some people aboard the Sturgis, and we were to go wander around, look at stuff, and book me a haul out of here for salvage, how much space is going to take. They were very lucky that I did get the job with them because they would have never gotten into containment the way they were trying it. The containment door, if you went down there, it just looked like, here's a couple of I-beams across it, holding it in place. Not really. They had no stress on them at all. What they were designed to do is they slid into a couple of some notches on the frame and had another piece that locked onto the door. You hydraulically pulled the door shut. Then this thing is pulling all the stress up against it. There's a hydraulic system that slid wedges shut to wedge the door. You're familiar, essentially the same way a Navy ship just the regular door, one handle on it. There was like two on each side of the door.
Rotating the handle shut.
Well, this was a piston.
I see.
It slid up on there. Then you took off the pressure on the beams because you got something that wedges it shut. These guys are going to go down there and just, here's the hydraulics to open the door, put pressure onto the hydraulics, and those wedges were not going to slide. They didn't have the stress off. We would have had hydraulic fluid all over the place. And I hear about it, no, this ain't going to go work. But anyway, that was done at Fort Eustis, Virginia, in the James River Reserve Fleet, moored next to the Savannah. So most of the time to get to the Sturgis, we crossed the Savannah.
I see. That was a piece of history.
And some of it, one of the guys that was helping us on this was essentially a caretaker for both of them, and it would just go around and make sure nothing was leaking badly and ventilate stuff sometimes and all that stuff. he opened up the Savannah so he could do a tour on it. Flashback to the 50s.
Wow. That's neat. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate the interview. This is History of the Heartland signing off. Thank you so much.
I think of any of my... Let's see.